Hey, everybody, welcome back to SmarterUmedia, the only place on the internet you get smarter in 2 minutes. Well, we're wildly excited today to be able to talk of one of the two inevitable things. They say that death and taxes are inevitable. We have with us super accountant Kylee Dacy, who's going to help us understand it's not just inevitable, it can be fun. Kylee Dacy, welcome to SmarterU.
Thank you for having me.
Ever since I saw you, you received the fabulous award for teaching at the Rawls College of Business because your students, this is one of those things where students were so excited by accounting that they said, she's just awesome. So since that time, I've been excited to do this together so that we can help people understand how important it is. We don't waste any time. We get straight to the 2 minutes. So let's go there. Oh, I got to set the timer. Remember the chicken timer. We got to get it all squared away. Kylee Dacy, make us just a little bit smarter.
Okay. So I think that as part of my job, I've seen a lot of misconceptions about accounting. I want to focus on two today. I want to start with young people and then talk about tax-paying citizens and their misconception. So for young people, you hear a lot, oh, I hate math, so I wouldn't be good at accounting. And that is simply not true. Beyond basic algebra, add, subtract, multiply, divide, accounting is not much math. We're really organizing business transactions. So if you think about a closet, if all of your clothes is just thrown in on the floor, really hard to know what you have and find out, how to get ready in the morning, what you need to wear. But if you maybe color code your closet or put it by season, it's a lot easier to get in there and know what you have and get ready more quickly in the morning. That is
Great.
exactly what a business is doing with their accounting. So you can easily identify those deliverables, and accounting is organizing business information. And then misconception number two is more for tax-paying citizens. I hear a lot, people don't really worry about their tax savings because, oh, my CPA does my taxes. If you have a CPA that does your taxes, they are just thinking about compliance. So they're really just like making sure your taxes are correct. They're not necessarily focusing on saving money. So if you want to optimize your taxes and pay less to the government, you probably need a consultant or a planner to help you do that. So accounting is not just math. It's actually organizing financial information, and you are not doing the most by just having your CPA do your taxes. You need to begin with the end in mind and find a consultant so that you can plan to optimize your tax liability and you pay less to the government that way. So yeah, I hope that I made you guys smarter about accounting and cleared up those misconceptions.
Look at that. You got us there with 10, wait, 7 seconds. I think it was 10 seconds. We'll give you 10 seconds to spare.
There
That's
we go.
absolutely, absolutely. That's awesome. And, I love metaphors. You gave us such a beautiful metaphor for life. But first, I have to tell the fabulous Smarter You audience, we understand life's busy, particularly as tax season rolls around. We're fortunate to have Kylee make it with us because she's doing those kinds of things these days also. But feel free to go on to your lives. But I think we have some nuggets that we can really build out and grow on. So thank you. Come back. We'll see you next time, or stick around because we're so compelling. You're going to want to hear so much more about accounting. Did you ever imagine? Did you imagine? I mean, truly, isn't it one of those things that we look at accounting and it gets such a bad rap because it's constructed in such a way that we say, oh, it's something I have to do.
Mhm.
And I'm going to dig underneath that a little bit because everything in life, this is one of those general principles. Anything you look at as something you have to do, if you can help your mind turn it back around, like you're helping us do, into something that you get to do, something that gives you power, it changes your life, right? That's
Absolutely.
a general principle. So
Absolutely.
so let's dive into the closet, shall we?
Yeah.
I love the metaphor. So the metaphor of the closet, and I remember in college, we actually just used to pile our clothes out, my roommate and I, in the middle of the floor
Wait, that's
until,
so funny. That is the first step in my closet analogy in class that I use. Like some of y'all
so
probably just have it in the middle of the floor.
yes, well, that's literally what we did and laughed. And we believed that truly over time, the things that worked their way to the bottom, they were clean by the time they got to the bottom. That's such a guy college thing.
Uh,
But let's go into the closet and let's dissect that a little bit, because if you empower yourself to organize yourself, it
Mhm.
will change how all of your financial situation works.
Yes.
Unpack that for me a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. I am a firm believer that the most basic thing that everyone can do with their money to make sure that they're doing good is look at it. Just look at it. If you simply have a debit card and you just have things going in, going out, all of your subscriptions are coming just straight out of your bank account, that's very dangerous. That's the equivalent to having all of your clothes in a pile on the floor. It works and you can get things done, but you're out of control. So absolutely, the first step that we want to do is just take a time to look at it, figure out what organization system we need. So yes, we're starting with the jumbled mess on the floor, and we want to start organizing that. Um, and we're doing that, yeah, simply by looking at what we have, and then we can figure out what shelves we need and how many hangers we need and stuff like that. Um, then now you probably have a more organized closet, and you can get ready more quickly in the morning because you know where your shirts are and things like that. Um, I'm struggling here in my brain between personal and business because there is overlap. And that principle is true of you want to
Yeah.
look at what you have either way. Um, but let's go ahead and just talk personal. So
Yes. So let's start personal. We'll have plenty of time to get to more complicated circumstances, but let's start with the personal,
yeah,
because that applies to just all of
to
us, right?
everyone, absolutely. So yes, if you are currently living in a situation like I just talked about with a debit card and a bank account, and that's all you got, and things are just going in and out, and you're never really looking at it, I would encourage you to be responsible about it, but to put anything you can on your credit card. Because your credit card time value of money thing here, you don't have to pay it off for a month. Okay, so if you get paid monthly, say, you have the cash in your bank, I would probably do a money market account because you're going to get a higher interest rate on that than you would a regular checking account. I would get a money market account and I would hold that for a month because that's a couple of bucks that you wouldn't have otherwise earned. And then on
Right.
the flip side, if those expenses that would have otherwise come out of your bank account and made it to where you couldn't make that interest, um, if those expenses are just sitting on a credit card, that isn't due until the next month. So you get those couple of dollars of interest and then you get to pay off that credit card immediately next month. So you're kind of almost doing a lapping type situation. And you're only going to earn a few bucks from that, but you have that control. And I think that's important.
It's also a basic principle. So in accounting generally, and all businesses, I've talked to people who were doing an analysis of a business
Mm-hmm.
in Asia,
Mm-hmm.
and the business had bid way below what anybody believed they could possibly. So they thought there was corruption going on. So they went and investigated it.
Mm-hmm.
All they were doing, though, was being smart about the time value of money. So they knew when they had to pay the money back. And when they went and visited, the guy who was doing the investigation just went out and had said, "How is it possible that you're picking me up in a limo?" And he said, "Well, just let me explain." He went, "Oh, of course." And they were just being smarter about it. Well, we can apply that to our own personal lives generally. So I'm just going to try to say back what you said to me so I can help make sure we understand it.
Absolutely.
No matter how simple your financial circumstance is, you can be better if you organize it in such a way that it pays you more.
Yes.
And at the same time, you know what's going on. Know what's
Absolutely.
going on,
Yes.
right?
No
Know what's
leaks.
going on.
No leaks.
So with the credit card, so here was the example number one is you can go ahead, put things on your credit card, which believe me, but they want to get you a credit card. But the reason is they think you're not going to pay it back. So the
Correct.
second part of that has to be that you're on auto pay, that essentially that comes out of an account and you know it will be paid off. You keep an eye on it, but it will be paid off without you going into high interest debt.
Absolutely. Because it's a double-edged sword, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I personally I've been at places where I've gotten paid bi-weekly, weekly, and then now monthly is how I get paid. And I just do it every payday. That's when I pay off my credit card. But see, and yeah, you could get into all crazy things, but I also look at it very often throughout the month. If you're
Right.
swiping, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm out of control. I need to go and look and see kind of where I am.
Yeah.
So I personally have like $1 per day amount that I like to stick around. It's obviously an average. But I think that everyone could develop that for themselves. And then you kind of
Yeah.
just have that baseline during your day. Like, hey, I only need to spend $60 today, and that's okay. And then maybe I spent 10. And then tomorrow I'm like, ooh, might be a good day to fill up with gas today because, kind of things like that. I think that if
But
we have that,
that's a
go
great
ahead.
tool.
Yeah, well, if you have that baseline in your head, you can, you kind of just have a better gauge again, like of how you're organizing your money.
Yeah. So it's something that most of us just don't do. So no matter where you are, if you can take what you believe you have to spend in
Yes.
in a month, right? So whatever the period is in 2 weeks. So if you are fortunate to have a job that allows you to get paid every 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
then you get money coming in. You know what that's going to be. You break that down in such a way that there are taxes that will come out of that, and that usually
Mm-hmm.
comes before your paycheck. But there are other fixed expenses that are coming, and that brings you down to I have $60. I have
Yes.
$30. I have $100. Whatever it is, I have a day. And then you can make a mental check, keep track as you go along, and you're not going to get surprised.
Yes, and I think to kind of extend on that, I think the credit card situation and not just relying on your bank account, I think that helps people not look at their bank account and think, oh, that's what I have to spend, because it isn't. That is
Yeah.
not true, because I would
Yeah.
assume you have a goal to save as well. So instead of looking at your bank account for, oh, yeah, I have this much, no, you have X amount to spend per day. Don't even look at your bank account. That's not yours. Don't touch it. And then
Yeah.
also order of operations. Go ahead and save, even if it feels like you're like really like, dang, I don't really know if I can save this much. Save, like stretch the amount that you're going to save. Because if you just have it out of sight, out of mind, you don't even really know the difference. But if you wait to the end of the month and save what's left over, you're probably not going to save very much.
Well, and it is the miracle of saving a percentage of what you make that people don't understand how that compounds over time. So we have an expert with us today. We're going to help you understand the miracle that is having resource over time, that you continue to dedicate yourself no matter what you make. You can take a percentage of it and put it away. Even when things crop up that are emergencies, you'll have sort of an
Mhm.
emergency fund, but to plan for your future. Let's talk about that.
About an emergency fund and planning for your future.
No, planning for your future. I mean, because things come up and there's nothing you can do
I know.
about that. But assuming that you can plan for what your financial future is going to be, it pays off more than you imagine. There are calculators that help you. Let's talk about that so you
Okay.
can see the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's super important. It's kind of backwards because when you're young, you're not making quite as much money as maybe you are later into your career. And also, when you're young, you're thinking about retirement less because that's never going to happen to me. When you look at those funds and it's like target retirement date 2065, you're like, yeah, that's not even a thing, right? But it's crazy. It is so much more beneficial to save the most when you're young because of that compound interest.
Yeah.
So I think just kind of think about it like a residency, right? A doctor, they kind of have that residency that they're not getting paid very much and it kind of stinks and they're putting in a lot of work, but
Right.
then they get to that carrot at the end. That is how saving for retirement, I believe, should be. You live when you're young like you don't have any money, and you save away as much as you can. And pay as little taxes as you can. I'm of that theory, as you can while you're young, and then you kind of get to coast as you get later into your career, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's the American dream. I don't say that lightly. I really do
Mm-hmm.
believe the idea is roll up your sleeves, American work ethic, work and make it possible for you to potentially be in a position where you can really enjoy along the way. Don't put it off, live today, do
Yeah.
that sort of thing. On the other hand, like I said, no matter what you make, a percentage of that you can put away and start building, and it makes a big difference. So here's where accountants become killjoys. Are you ready? Here
Oh
we go.
no.
I have a dear friend who, not an accountant, but who actually runs the company that I started,
Mhm.
and he did an analysis just by taking what you would pay at Starbucks every day. And again, it sounds like such a killjoy. So he took that, put it in the compound interest just generator that he found on one of the websites. And he said, if you didn't do that, assuming you just got one every day, he found out that by the time you would reach retirement age, it was something like $500,000. It was an
Oh, no doubt.
insane
No
amount of
doubt.
money.
And I don't even, there's things like that that I'm like, okay, I don't even want to know.
And like I said, that's the killjoy, but I only use
Yeah.
it as an example, not to say don't get a Starbucks. Get a Starbucks, enjoy it, right? Do that, live your life. On the other hand, just understand that if you then take and spend everything that you're making, you will not be doing what you can for that trip you want to take, or for
1000%.
yeah,
Be intentional about it. Be
yeah,
intentional and about everything you do. Like, for example, Rose's Cafe, it's a Texas thing and I love it. They have beef fajitas with queso. They're like $6. And when we were growing up, we would all go through Roses, and my mom was like, "We're getting beans and tortillas," and so that was real cheap. And my dad would be like, "Well, no, I want the beef fajita with queso," and she's like,
yeah.
"Russ, those are $6," and she was right. Like, if he would have just, which I mean, my dad probably didn't care at that point, but it was like, if he would have just eaten that with us, probably $500,000, you know?
And again, that's where it becomes sort of a killjoy. You don't want to deconstruct your life so that you have no life, but you can do a yes and. In the world of improv, we talk about yes and. It's sort of live your life today, but also plan for the future, right?
Absolutely. And if you know, like there's some people you would tell that about Starbucks and they'd be like, I don't care, I need my Starbucks. More power to them. Like, that is awesome. I think that just looking at your money and knowing where it's going and being intentional with it is the important piece.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And we're going to stay in the personal realm for just a little bit longer, but you have worked in corporations and we're going to sort of get to some of that. So it's coming. Don't worry, it's coming. But I want to in when you teach students, so when you
Uh-huh.
sit down with students and you give them a roadmap for their accounting and life, what do you sort of help lay out? What are the tips you give them that you can give us that we can take with us beyond the things we've already discussed?
Dang, my favorite life tip, and I said it in the introduction, it's begin with the end in mind.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like when young people go to college, they are just looking at what do I major in? And then some of them even take it a step further of what's going to be the easiest thing to major in because I just
sure.
want a degree. And that is fine, but degrees are very expensive.
They are.
So I am of the belief, like, I'm very creative. I loved art in high school
Yeah,
and I love doing hair and makeup. Love it. Um, but I come by those things very naturally, and I don't necessarily need 4 years of education to get better at those things. However,
mhm,
what it's almost impossible to come by naturally and just be born with it is accounting. That's a learned thing. It's like a language. So I think that that is very important, is to get a degree. I'm not saying in accounting, but in something that you cannot learn yourself and you don't really come by naturally. Use the resources that the
yeah,
college provides while you are there so that later down the road, you don't find yourself wanting this promotion, wanting this job, but you don't have qualifications that are simply from college classes. For example, if you go and look up the CFO position for most large corporations, it will either say CPA preferred or CPA required.
right.
When you tell that to a finance student, they're shocked. And rightfully so. Chief Financial Officer, finance, financial. But as it is now, finance majors, and even just an accounting bachelor's degree, are not eligible to sit for the CPA exam and take it. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, they're eligible to sit now. They're not eligible to get that license yet. So make sure that you get what you can while you're in college so that later down the road, you do not run into that roadblock and have to go back to school.
It's really great. Planning for the future is a lovely thing for us to keep in mind all the way across the line. And a CPA is one of those degrees that has performed very well for lots of people for a long time. I love that I love your talk about validating it. It is not inexpensive to go and get a degree. I think that is a great motivation. I also think there's no other time in your life where you get exposure to things you otherwise may never have imagined you would do.
Mm-hmm.
And accounting maybe that was that for you. How did you find accounting? How did accounting find you?
This is kind of embarrassing, but I tell it when I recruit. I didn't want to take a foreign language because that just sounded so scary to me. And then I also didn't want to take that many sciences. It just wasn't in my journey. So I was like, dang, business school is kind of what that left me with. And then my mom has an accounting degree, and she's actually a high school accounting teacher is what she does. And then my
Ah,
brother is 16 months older than me, and he had chosen accounting just cuz, and he said it's like made for me. It just makes sense in my brain. So I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Same genes, let's see it. And that is how I ended up in accounting.
that makes an awful lot of sense. It's amazing how many of us sort of follow in a path that was around us when we were in a household. So that makes a ton of sense.
Well, and
Yeah.
what's cool for the accounting profession is that accounting is familiar to everyone. They just might not know it. But most people probably know someone who works with accounting or at least does the books for a company, something like that. And people tend to do and like what's familiar to them. So I think accounting, people recruiting accounting students really need to play into that familiarity.
All right. So, as you know, the Alderson Griffin Center for Family Business and
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship is what SmarterU is.
Mhm.
So, we talk about business. We talk to entrepreneurs. We talk to people who are in family businesses who are wondering whether or not they want to be a
Mhm.
part of that. I would say the guide of the way to plan your finances better is critical to an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
anyone who wants to start something. And I think everyone has some big idea, right?
Yeah.
They're all going, oh, if I could just do whatever. And organizing not just the idea part of it, but setting in motion things that could help you create that is what it's all about. Because if you don't have that, you won't create anything.
I agree completely. I agree completely. You have to look at it. Then and it's so funny because it's so simple. You don't have to be a CPA or an expert to just pay attention to your money. And that's what so many people fail to do. Cuz it's kind of scary to look at it because you're like, "Oh dang, it's not exactly the position I thought I was in." But it's even worse if you're in that position and you're not checking into it all the time.
And for better or for worse. So not just
Yes.
when it's the sword of Damocles over your head that is, oh no, I don't imagine what it is. It's always better when you understand it and you
Mhm.
can then start to build either from a challenging position or know where you are. Oftentimes you're surprised by it
Yeah.
being better than you thought. Well,
Mhm.
you've helped companies from early stage, late stage. You've helped people sort of find that way. What is the roadmap you would give to somebody? So here I have an idea. I want to go and start a thing. How do I start to build the financial structure that would undergird that possibility? It's a big question, but
Yeah.
that's the you are positioned to answer it. The rest of us oftentimes are going, where do I
See,
start?
and that's what's crazy is I get that conceptually, but it is so hard without looking at a specific business. But kind of just to give a framework, golly, and I know there's controversy over it, but if you have an existing business, I would cut cost, get rid of everything, and then put back what's absolutely necessary. I get that it's controversial, but I also think that, I mean, that's what I do in my life, right? Like if I were to start and look at someone's budget, I would get rid of everything and then be like, do you really need Hulu and Netflix and YouTube TV? You need all that? Okay, we're going to get rid of all of it. And then when you go try to log into YouTube TV and don't have it, we'll add you back on that. Okay. Like that is a really good way to budget for companies and individuals. Starting from the beginning, I would say try not to get into anything unnecessary. And try not to just let it all get out in front of you so that you don't even know what you have going on. There was a big fraud recently in Lubbock, and it was a business manager who was paying fictitious vendors at a law firm. That's what happened. And it blows my mind that as a business owner, you would put so much trust in another individual that you didn't even know who you were paying what for. Like, that you didn't even know you had that big of a contract with a vendor, or that big of payments are going to a vendor and you don't even know what they're doing for you. So again, that paying attention to stuff is just so important.
It is the building block. I mean, the finances are the building block. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing, having run public and private companies, the reality of having to sign off on all of the financials that went into public markets was a great education that most people don't get. But it's one of those things where essentially the SEC can come after you because you've said,
Yeah.
I verify that I've looked at this, I confirm what it is, and you go into more detail than you can imagine. That's a great sort of way to look at it. If you could take your startup business, or you could take your small business that you'd like to grow and treat it with that kind of feeling that it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be, it's really important that we know where the finances are. We're tracking them and not just cutting, but planning for success,
Yeah.
which is oftentimes something we don't do enough.
That is a great point. And I think that planning for success, you need to, or business owners need to think about their accounting software. Don't get the cheapest one to start. And I don't know, price point, not really, but don't get the most basic one to start
Right.
with and think, oh, I'll just deal with that as we grow. That would be a disaster nightmare in my mind. I think that's something that you would stretch and be like, hey, we expect to be here. Let's get the software that's going to maybe get us here. Because switching softwares, I don't know if you've ever been somewhere that's done it, but switching accounting softwares is tough because you're losing that
Yeah.
detail in your closet, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah. We don't want to lose the clothes in the closet again.
No. We need
No.
socks.
What software do you like? I mean, that's practical, but what software do you think is good today?
Well, it's hard. It's hard depending on what industry you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But when I worked at the general contractor, they used a company called Foundation Software. And it was really great. Like it was a great price point, and it had really good job costing to where you could see budget to actual, and you could do, oh my gosh, you could do so much with this. You could even take the data from the software and link it to Excel, and it was the best thing ever. So you could make, as the accounting person, I was able to make like workbooks for people that would refresh to our real-time accounting data that they did not have
Mm-hmm.
access to otherwise, which is important too as an internal control.
Yeah.
So they could look at their project and they could say, hey, we're doing a project in this geographical area for this long. What dumpster company is going to make this many pools and for the cheapest amount? So they could kind of look at things like that. So that foundation software is awesome. But that again is for a construction company. But I get that most companies do have kind of projects that go on. I'm just not sure. I'm just not super sure about how adaptable foundation is to every industry.
Yeah, of course. And so you'll have to do your own research clearly to find out what works in your sector and
Yeah.
the like, but finding something that is expandable, something that works, and probably in the world of the interweb, there are plenty of review sort of sites to help you find that. And your
Yeah.
accountant needs to be able to use it too. It
Yeah.
has to be
Yeah.
something they're familiar with, right?
Well, and the one that shall go unnamed that everyone uses, I don't want to bash it, but the last time I worked in that one, the very, very popular one, there was not a way, like in accounting, it's double entry accounting. So that means that there's like a journal entry, your debits
Right.
equal your credits, and then they go different places, right?
Right.
Um, the last time I used that one, they didn't have anything that showed which debits went with which credits. So you kind of had to use tools like find that date as a reference point and make sure that you were finding all the parts of the journal entry. Your accounting software should absolutely tell you a journal entry number, and
Yeah.
I don't know if that one does that.
Okay. Well, that's big, buyer beware, right? So I think it is amazing sometimes how things that are legacy sort of technologies stick around because
Mm-hmm.
they're stickier than you think. And all things are. When I'm used to using, no matter how bad one platform is, if I know all the buttons to push, I am much more content to stay there than learning a whole new world. So, like you said, it's hard to switch. Find a good one early is great. Great
You sound like
advice.
you're talking about employees too. I feel like that's kind of how that
I,
goes sometimes.
well, it's about the humans, and so let's talk about that. There's an incredible relationship that people have to the great fiction that we call money, and
Mm-hmm.
their relationship to that within a workplace is not a small thing. So when you intersect at dollars, and you talked about how cutting is sometimes just a great place to start, the impact that that can have on the humans that are involved in the process is tangible, and it can destroy, disrupt, do the kinds of things. So let's talk about that. I mean, witnessing as a controller, which you have been in companies, how do you do that in such a way that it keeps the human element working too?
It's hard.
I know.
um, yeah, I mean, oh gosh, yeah. Um, I think that there's probably a sweet spot of you have to do kind of some cutthroat things, and then you also have to understand that these are people. Um, but from kind of that cutthroat side, if that person isn't adding value, then they're they're drawing away, they're sucking resources away from the company. So I don't know. You can kind of that's kind of I think getting into philosophical ideas that people have. Um, I'm kind of probably lean more that way of show me how you're adding your value. And if you're not, then I'm so sorry, but go find somewhere that you can add value. It's not here. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's pretty tough.
Oh, we talk philosophy all the time. SmarterU's all about the philosophy and the intersection. In other words, no matter what we do in business, no matter what we do in life, it is at its core a union of people and or individuals
Yeah.
who are doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think you're going to start a business and grow it, have it be successful, and not run into the gigantic challenges that come with success. This is part of planning for success.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that you will no longer be a handful of people showing up very excited about creating this thing. You will be 150 people, you will be 500 people
Mm-hmm.
who are, many of them, coming to make a paycheck
Right.
and support their families. And I don't say that with disdain. It's sort of, may you be fortunate enough to be someone who is a job creator.
Yeah.
So in that context, it's gonna happen. And it watching you respond to the question, I get, because you must have been in those. It's the worst. Okay, the best part
Mm-hmm.
of business are the people. The hardest part of
Mm-hmm.
business are the people. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, and I think I kind of want to add to my answer. I'm not like, hey, get out of here if you're not adding value. I think that is a process of
yeah,
conversations of being upfront with the person and saying, here's what we're expecting from you. Here's kind of where you are. I really need you to get here, or at least progress toward here. And so I think that probably to maintain the human element, but also look out for the business, that process, as long as it either ends with that person doing what they're supposed to and adding value, or when you walk into that person after warning and you go into their office and they know they know, hey, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So it doesn't become, this company is horrible and all of this. It's more like, hey, I didn't really do what I was supposed to do.
So immediately now, Kylee, you're going to go, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Because I think that beneath it is another planning. So we started
Yeah.
this whole thing off by talking about planning. If you
Mm-hmm.
are a management team or you are a entrepreneur with your team around you and
Mm-hmm.
you have not had the pre-conversation of how it is we deal with the realities of employees and or I like to think of us as collaborators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Collaborator employees who are facing the business. If the business doesn't work, none of us are here.
Mm-hmm.
So if a philosophical discussion can be had of how we handle those things up front and ongoing, you have a much better chance of making it so not only is it not uncomfortable, everybody understands the expectations. And like you just said, you have a chance to make it so people can not just survive, but they can thrive. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really a better workplace. It's better no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. So far we've talked about looking at your finances before you get everything thrown out in front of you and you don't know what's going on. Um, Looking at your employees before everything gets out of in front of you and you have this mess. Planning is so important. Beginning with the end in mind and laying that groundwork.
Yeah. So here we are back where we started, and that's beautiful, right? Look at
Principles.
that,
Accounting is principles
principles.
based.
um, I know in your education, you took an accelerated program at
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech. Tell me a little about that because I think education's different now, so different than it used to be. And there are options where people may think, oh, I just don't have time to, but they may be able to. I'd love to hear how that came about.
Yeah, so it has since changed. I graduated in 20. I had to look. I graduated in 2020 with my bachelor's and master's in accounting, and at that time, you had to have 150 hours to sit for the CPA exam.
Right.
So the accelerated program basically just kind of took a few things out of the undergrad program, moved them to grad, and you had a bachelor's and a master's at the end of 5 years. We're seeing more and more students coming in with lots of dual credit. So some of those students can do this in 4 years, which is really cool. But that was like imperative because you had to have that 150 to sit for the CPA exam. Now they have it to where you have to have 120 to sit for the CPA exam,
Mm.
but 150 to get the license in the state of Texas.
I see.
And that was very recent, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And what they're in the process of even furthering that is saying you can only have 120 hours, but 2 years of work experience is going to equate to that extra year of education.
Oh, okay. That's great.
I feel about
Oh,
it.
you're ambivalent. Okay.
Because so right now it's the 150 and 1 year of work experience, and they're going to do an alternative pathway where it's 120 and 2 years of work experience.
I
So they're
see.
saying 1 year of work experience equals 1 year of education.
Right.
I don't know. The reason they're doing this alternative pathway is so that um, because of the pipeline issue with CPAs and public accounting firms, there's just simply not enough.
Right.
Um, but a lot of that is to do with this thing called two and done. People graduate, they go
Yeah.
work for a big firm for 2 years, and then they say, this isn't the life for me, bye.
Right.
So in my mind, this alternative pathway, if it's only 2 years of work experience,
Yeah.
you're going to reward the two and done, and you're still going to have the same problem. What if we
Yeah.
upped it to 5 years so that or 4 or 3, like just something to show a little bit more commitment than like the notorious two and done. And
Yeah.
then I could maybe get more behind that, if that makes sense.
It's like basketball. Two and
Yeah.
done. One and
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly. We're
just
going to
like
lose some good
basketball.
ones to the NBA this year at Texas
That's
Tech.
exactly right. That's the way that is going to work this year.
I know, but you know what? We had a great season, so I'm okay with
Uh,
it.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I think is it like law? So I have a law degree where you're licensed in a particular
Yeah.
state. If you are licensed in Texas, do you then have to get relicensed if you move to another state?
So as of now, Texas is good anywhere.
Oh,
But
okay.
as far as this alternative pathway, they're looking into that as well as a separate bill. But New York has said they're not moving. They're not moving on the 150. That's going to be a requirement. So I'm not sure
Right.
exactly how that will look if Texas moves. I think it's very surprising that we would potentially be a first mover in this, like
Yeah.
in my mind, to a lower standard. But lower standard of education. I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah.
But you're passing the CPA exam, so that's a hard test. So if you can pass that, you're good. I worry about people actually being able to pass it with just 120 hours of education.
So,
But
future accountants out there, pay attention to what the rules are, which I'm sure you'll be guided wherever you are, but make sure that if you think you're going to move to other places, you understand how that works, right?
absolutely.
That's a good piece of advice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
All
think
right.
too, this also might just end up with making the master's degree even more valuable because the requirement right now is 150 hours. It's not necessarily a master's.
Right.
So I think that maybe right now the CPA is the big one that it's like, you really need that.
Yeah.
If the CPA becomes more common, then a master's degree is maybe what's going to be the big thing to have.
All right,
So
I'm going to tell you, I looked at our time and I can't
I know,
believe how fast this has gone.
I
But
know.
I'm not done. I have to ask another question, but I have to
Okay.
get to it before we're done because
Yeah.
technology, since we've talked about various little bits of technology, the big elephant in the room is AI. And there are lots of professions that will be profoundly affected.
Mhm.
There's no way you're not talking about this with your students. So,
Mhm.
what are you saying?
I think it's just like essentially going to like sorry, the word is not coming to my brain. Basically, your career is going to start farther along than it otherwise would have.
Right.
Like when I did my internship, lots of data entry still going on, and things like that. And then it's not until later on that you get into kind of the big boy accounting stuff, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So I think that you're going to see more complex issues earlier on in your career. Um, I know at the very beginning of AI, ChatGPT could pass the bar, but not the CPA exam. Um,
Mm,
Accounting is a very interesting profession where there's a lot of professional judgment that is exercised.
right.
Um, Professional judgment requires lots of knowledge about even like attitudes, right? Like
Right.
if you've known this controller at a company for a while and you're like, ooh, they're a little suspect sometimes about little things.
Yeah.
That's hard to articulate to a computer in a private way, then where the privacy of your own mind
Right.
as a human being, it's okay. So I think they're okay. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
I do everything on paper in class, and they have to take exams on paper. So
Right.
you can study with it all you want, but you really have to be able to perform on an exam. But like, for example, today I was looking at depreciation methods and I just was like, hey, can you generate a graph with using these depreciation methods and show me depreciation expense over the life of this asset? Right up. It was awesome. So I
Hello.
think it's going to make life easier in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, but I don't think it'll take jobs from CPAs ultimately because of that professional judgment.
Yeah. And I think the expression I've heard is, use the tool because jobs will not be lost because of AI will not take your job. Someone who knows how to use
Yes.
AI will take your job. So
Yes.
know how to use it. I love that you figured out how to do it. Paper's great because that's not digital and it's probably something that we would benefit from doing more anyway. So I love that answer.
Absolutely. And I saw a meme the other day I have to share. It said, ChatGPT is an expert in subjects I know nothing about. And it's not very good at subjects I'm an expert in. I'm not going to think on this any further. I'm just not going to think about it.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. All right, we could talk for 3 to 4 days, which
I
I'm
know
sure
we'll have to
would
do
be
this again.
too much fun. You'll have to come back. We end with sort of a help us curate our information world since the world is full of information. What have you come with that's something that can help me better understand my own world and the information in it?
I have one written down, but from where our conversation went, this is going to sound kind of juvenile probably, but NerdWallet. I love NerdWallet for things like, for when I remember when I was first starting my career, I'm like, how much do I save? Or like just certain little questions like that. So I love to go there and see kind of
Yeah.
those benchmarks and baselines. And I think they have a lot of good information. So NerdWallet.
That doesn't sound juvenile. Honestly, it's great to have a starting place.
Yeah.
If we can leave people to say, who knows where your financial journey will lead you, but here's a place that will, like you said, ask you questions. It will get you to think about things you don't even know that you need to explore or ask. I
Yeah,
love it.
absolutely.
It is great to see you. We will
Too.
have you back, Lookout World. And I know you have to get to class because we've got to do what we can, fill those minds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're probably super excited. Big day today.
Oh, all right, Kylie. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Steve. I
joining us.
appreciate it.